Hi everyone and welcome back. Welcome to my playlist, and here we are talking about nestjs Advanced, and we are talking about module 1. And in the module 1, the next topic we are going to talk about is a custom logger. So you already know that in the Node.js world there are lots of logging solution available. Like Winston is really very popular logger which provides a different transport. Like you can send a logs to a file, logs to a console, logs to a maybe elastic log stash. It's like a transport mode. Your log is being generated by your application, and now to aggregate, analyze all those things, you sometimes need to transport your logs to either console, that is a default. Otherwise you can send it to the files and you just use log rotate to rotate the files and delete and purge the old files on your server. Otherwise, like if you are using serverless like Lambda and all, then you need to transport your logs to either console or to some other third-party platform so you can analyze. So you can see this is how we create a simple logger, right? Winston.create logger, and it asks you to all the different transports. And if you have done the simple Node.js Express application, there we use Winston to log your console logs or send it to logs to the files, error log, debug log, based on that. So similarly, we already know how to do the logging in the nestjs, which is provided by nestjs logger. There is a logger module is already available in the nestjs common, but let's say if I want to create my own logger module, then there are multiple solutions. Nest Winston is one of it. Like either you create your custom logger service class and then use a logger Winston logger only there inside that, and then expose that service and module and use that module in your application. But somebody like me or myself or some other developers like this can publish their own modules. Like if you see what this package contains, I will try to show you what this package contains. So this guy built this as a asynchronous this custom module. What this module is providing under the hood, it is also using Winston, but you don't need to write a wrapper for using Winston.create logger. Instead of that, that guy created a simple nestjs package, nestjs module, which is under the hood is using the Winston, and it is exposing only these simple methods forRoot and forRootAsync. So you don't need to worry about providing configuration. But if you see the code, if you see, this is the Winston module, and here you can see this is how we are going to also write our dynamic module. This is very important, and this covers only inside the advanced stuff. Here what we are doing is we are creating the Winston provider, right? And we are passing these custom options which we are going to ask the consumer, because I'm going to use this module for my logging. I will include this module from the npm, and then I will call this forRoot method and forRootAsync. If you remember, we have a TypeORM module.forRoot, TypeORM module.forRootAsync. Similarly, nestjs TypeORM is built by some nestjs people. This is a random module which is developed by some other developer who is exposing this as a dynamic module. So while you are using it, you can use this forRoot and forRootAsync method. And what it is doing is, if you see create Winston provider inside providers, so what it is doing, you can see it should be using one service. You can say return Winston logger service, and you can see it is using this create logger which is coming from Winston. So what is this inside this package? Nothing. It's just like some structure. You need to create a providers, you need to expose forRoot and forRootAsync method, and then under the hood you are using the same thing. You are using this provider and use factory to pass the instance, and these login options you are going to pass as a dynamic module options. Okay, and here this you are injecting. So if I want to use this, how would I use this in my example? So somebody has built this module. I'm also going to build my own custom module. Let's say in the next video, that's a custom dynamic module which you can consume using the same, like my custom module.forRoot and forRootAsync. Now if you look into this provider, here it is just calling the instance. Here it is just creating a Winston logger and calling the create logger method and passing the logger options. So what it is taking, it is doing the same thing. It has created this module and taking all these options from you. That's it. So it's not like a rocket science somebody has done. It's only about, instead of this, you will be doing Module.forRoot and forRootAsync, and you will be passing this module configuration dynamically, because you can decide for different environment you want to have a console transport, file transport and all, and this module is just same. Now you might be thinking, okay, it's very complex code and all. No, it's like same structure you will be using to build any dynamic module in your application. And here it is using the create logger, and you will be using create nestjs install logger and all that we will talk about. So how to implement, how to use this? Let's say I built this module and I just published it. How you will use it? You will use install-logger.forRoot, and inside that you are going to pass the options, and then in your classes, in your services or controllers, this is how you will inject the logger provider. Inject instant module provider logger, and then you can just do logger.config, logger.log, logger.debug and all. And if you want to use dynamic initialization, asynchronous initialization, you can just pass your Winston config class also. And talking about the some advanced example, like you can also pass some options, right? Okay, yeah, here it is. Winston module.forRoot. And now you will be thinking, okay, this we already know. I mean, Winston provides it. This module just helping you to create this as a simple separate module, dynamic module, and in the forRoot you can pass all your transport, all your configuration. That's it. And then all these are logging methods, and you will inject this logger service, and then you can just do logger.log, debug, verbose one, right? So same thing. For now, what I will do is, we can also try to build this. What I will do is, instead of doing this, we can try to replicate this, right? Whatever this module is doing, I will try to put this in the dynamic module. First, I wanted to talk about very simple dynamic module. Let's say creating a simple HTTP library, and then we will implement this logger module in same fashion like the dynamic module, and we will use this forRoot and forRootAsync method. So let's talk about the dynamic module. Hi everyone. So let's talk about the dynamic module. I mean, in past I published this blog which talks about okay, how to create a nestjs dynamic module and why is the need of creating it. For now, you might try to read it. We have already written this kind of a code where we are creating our own database module, and we are doing the dynamic initialization using forRootAsync. And because here the dependencies are coming from config module, so this is we are doing use factory. That is fine. Here we will come to this example also. First we'll try to understand the very basics of it. Let's say in my application I want to build my own package, let's say app email. Then we will come to the logger also. Simple example, I will go with the simple examples first. So let's say I have app email, and here I'm creating the same stuff. I can copy this from tsconfig. This is app email, and inside app email I will open this in the terminal, and here I'm going to talk about some bit of this node mailer. So we can just add PNPM add node mailer. Okay, and we are going to create an email service and email module, and then we will see what is the need of a dynamic module. So here I will create a source. Inside this I will create an email service.ts and then email module.ts, email.module.ts. Okay, so email module, we already know how to write a module. We will just create a simple module, and here we can say imports. Whatever, this should be coming from nestjs common, and then we have imports. Whatever you are importing, controllers, providers, and then export class email module. And now what this module we are creating for? We are creating this module so that we can send an email, right? A simple externalizing this logic injectable, and we are writing export class email service, and this class will have a simple constructor and will have a simple logic. Okay, how to send email. So let's say send email is a function it is providing us, and here we will be using node mailer, this dot node mailer transport. So to initialize the node mailer transport, first we need to create a variable private node mailer transport is of type mail, which should be coming from mail is the type which we can get from export. Let me see, export import everything as email from node mailer. Can I get something from this node mailer lib email? Let me see, or here this is only typing because maybe I'm using some old package node mailer. Let's say any node mailer transport. Always we get confused with this. So private read only, this is the private variable, and I'm going to initialize it inside a constructor. So I can say node mailer transport equal to, here I will be calling create transport. Create transport we can get from node mailer. This TypeScript compiler sometimes lazy, it doesn't give me autocomplete and I need to manually write it, which I don't like. So this we are getting from node mailer, and node mailer should give me the create transport, but it is also not there. Okay, let's see, we need to add the types also, so I can do it. PNPM add types for node mailer. Okay, so what we are doing is we are trying to create a transport so that we can send an email. Create transport, and inside create transport it will ask couple of options to me, right? So what options we are going to pass is the service, if you can see the variables. And now how we can get all these parameters? We already have this config service, can we use that? So I will just write inside config default I need a email service user and password, right? So I can create one interface and say okay email, and this will give me email config. I'm not going to write email config module again. We can use our config module. Inside email config we are going to pass three parameters: export interface email config. It will have a three parameters like service name, you can call it as a service name, username and password. Because we are creating a transport, we need to specify all the attributes for email SMTP, right? Like node mailer is not going to send email, you need to pass the the SMTP details. So this is going to be string required, this is going to be string required, this is going to be string required. And now email config, and this is our default. Here we can specify email, and here service name empty, username empty and password empty. And inside config service, as you know, this was required. So email, here what do we have? Service name, that should be coming from the config service, right? So I can just directly say is process.env env dot service name. So we need to prefix what this service is, email service name. So we are just configuring that inside a config service. And then we have two more attributes. One is a username, another is a password. So env dot email username. Let's use these variables, email username and email password. It is complaining because this can be undefined, right? So, and these are required. For TypeScript, that's a warning, so that's error. We need to specify. Now what we can do, we can build the config module, and we already have a dependency, or we can add the dependency of config module inside our app email module. So let's go here, dev config. It's already there, right? So what we need to do is, I will just build this package also. It's not showing me. It's a problem. Nx console is not showing me the updated one, or I didn't update the package JSON. Here package JSON, it should be email. I have saved it. Now go to the Nx console, app email. I will build this again, because now I should be getting the updated config package in this application. Okay, so this is not coming from config package. We already know these errors, which we can fix inside email service. Now what all parameters we need to pass? So we already have a config service which we can import from the config, and here I will import config service, and we can inject that inside a constructor, private read only config service. This is my config service, and this config service now I can use how? Simply config service dot get. I have this parameter, let's say email. So inside email I will get service name. And what are the other parameters? Auth. I mean, these are the attributes which we are passing in create transports. Auth will take 2 argument, user, if I remember correctly. Now config service dot get. This config service is coming from config package, email dot username, and then I have another argument is pass. So I will use the config service again, dot get dot email dot password. That's it. So this is how we are accessing our, we build the email service. Now if I want to send an email, what I will do is this dot email transport, this dot node email transport dot send email, and I need to pass the options which we are passing here. Options like, okay, whom to send email, options, and let's see if I can get the type. Yes, it's coming, mail dot options, and this also we can specify the type for this, mail transport. This is also of type mail. Is it send email? Okay, now our service is completely TypeScript safe. We can use it in different way, import everything as email, as mail from, this also is fine. Now I just created this mail service. Now we can create a simple module. Inside this, what we are going to import? Config module, third-party module which we are getting from another package, and then we have email service, and this is a package which, so we need to export it also so that other modules can use it. So we will use exports email service. That's it. That's our simple email module. But now let's see what is the problem with this. I mean, this is how we were building our config module and all, and there was no issues. Now we are talking about building something dynamic module. Here you can see we are using this config service to pass some username, password, and authentication credentials. But do you think these credentials are going to be going to change? I think they are global and they will always stay same as long as we use this particular service. So why can't we just create a dynamic module which takes these options at the module level, and we don't need to specify it anywhere? So this is the version 1. Okay, this is the version 1. I will just try to build this. the email. And now I think our build should pass. I think there is some warning should be here. Big service. I can consume it using this .config service. And I will build this again. So this is our simple email module we have created. Now this is the baseline one. I mean, this is how we were doing it. If you want to use it, then what you will do, anywhere you will just import this email module, which is giving you the email service, and you can just directly pass these email options, and you can call the send email method. The only thing is, in the consumer application, you need to populate these environment variables through .env. That's it. Okay, rest everything will work. Now I want to make this as a dynamic module. So this is, you can say, version 1. I will just create a new folder so that you guys can look into this. Okay, now I will be changing these module and this service. I want to create email module as a dynamic. So I will change the email module first and then email service. So inside our email module, we can have a simple method. So this is our module, right? Now we want to create it as a dynamic module. If you Google how to create a dynamic module, it's all about, okay, you will replace everything and you are going to return some methods from this. So this is going to be a global module. So you will just close this. This is going to be a global module. This is how you create it. And then export class, we already have it. So export class, email module. Inside this, you will create a static method, like, because you don't want to create an instance of email module class before calling the forRoot and forRootAsync method. For now, let's create a register method. You can also create a register async method. There is no convention that you should use forRoot and forRootAsync. If we will also change it, and it is going to take some options. Let's put any, and then we will just, so what it is going to do is dynamic module. Okay, I need to import the dynamic module. My TypeScript compiler is a little lazy. So here I need to do nestjs common, and from there, like, there is a module, so I can add a dynamic module here also. And what this function is going to return, its function is going to return dynamic module. Okay, and inside what it is going to return, it is going to return a structured same object, same module, which contains, okay, the module, services and all. So what it is returning, this is the module it is returning, email. This is the class, sorry, email module it will be returning, and the providers. Now if you remember, we talked about the dependency injection, and we talked about the custom providers, like the custom string based token injection and all. And we will specify our providers. Let's say I will be providing something, provide email config options. That's like a simple string. So I will create some interfaces also here. I will just call it as email.interface.ts, and here we can just create a simple string based token and options which you are going to pass. Export interface. What do we want is, we want to just globally pass these service name and username password instead of at service level, because these things are common and not going to change. So it's like a service is string, and then we have user is of type string, and then we have pass is of type string. I think it's let's keep it a user and pass. So these are the email options. So here we are creating custom provider, string based custom provider. So provide email config option, and what is the value? And here the use value is the email options which you have created. Options, whatever you are passing, and this type is email options. Email option contains service, username and password, right? And you might be having your own email service also. right? So you have created a simple module. Now what you are saying is, if you want to consume this module at anywhere, what you can do is you can call register method and you can pass all these different options. So at the consumer level, where I'm going to consume this is how I can do it. And at this config service, because at config service also we need to inject these options. This is a string token based provider. So how will I inject it in the service? This is my email service. Currently I'm doing it at the config service. Config service is giving me, but I don't want to depend on to that. So I can just simply say is private read options, and I will say email options. And here I need to inject it, this config options, inject email config options, and this is private options, email options. I will import this thing, options. Now we will use it to access these attributes. Options dot service, options dot user, options dot password. Inject I can import. So this is like, you can say, a revamp definition. Okay, why it is complaining again? Inject email config options, private options. Okay, I can simply say, you don't need to pass this dot because this is not an option, this is not a variable of this. Okay, let me just clean this up. That is fine. This is what it is saying. Unable to resolve signature parameter. Import config options. This is already, we have configured it, and these are the options we are passing. Email options, config service, and private options, email options. I mean, we can ignore all those things, nothing important. This is how we are injecting the dynamic module, right? So what we are doing is, here we created a custom provider, email config options. This is like an injectable token you have created, and the value of the token is these dynamic options. So at globally, what you did is you exposed the register method. Now let's say if I want to use this email module in my nestjs app, what I will do is I will import email module, call the register method, and pass the options. And those options contains the service name, user, and password. That's it. And rest, this internal service of this package is already using this config options to configure the transporter, the email transport, right? And you can send email. So now how would you do it? Like email service, let's say I will build this also. I'm not sure. Let me see. Define the provider in the same module scope. Exporting the provider. I mean, our module is already global. I will try to see this TypeScript error, but now how can we use it? We already have this email module. I will go to my application and I will import it. So I mean, we can just skip this warning. Now it is able to, we are able to build this email. And now how do I use it in my application? That's important, right? That's what we are doing. Inside domain module, go to domain module, and I will import this email module from, first I need to import, add this as a package, right? Inside package, same as the config, I need to add dev email. Okay, and at the root I can just do PNPM install, or you can build this. So it will get this definition available in this application. Go to your domain module, and inside domain module I can import from dev email, and I can just import the email module. Why doesn't export? Okay, the thing is I'm not exporting things properly there. Inside source I need to have an index.ts, and I need to export all these things, export everything from email interface, export everything from export everything from email module. Export everything from, what else we have, service. So these are all things we are exporting. I will build this again and I will build my application again so that I can get the definition of email module correctly. I will go to the app, npm run build, because this is dependent on 4 modules now, 4 packages. So it will build this, and then I think it has included the definition, and now email module is also coming. This is the version 2 we are writing. Okay, now I can do is email module dot register. You can see, we can see this register method coming up, right? And inside register, what we need to pass? Email options. If you see the definition, it takes email options. This is the package we have written, right? We need to pass service, user and password. And here we can use, so what we need to do is we need to pass this service, username and password from our service. So this is how we are passing register and service name, username, and our password. So this is how you will register this email module in your application. Okay, now what happens is, you might be thinking, why I'm not passing these values dynamically from the process.env or using the config module? Because if I will pass this from the process.env, that won't work, because if you are going to pass these values either hard coded, then this will work because we are expecting the values. But if you are passing that from the config module, you are dependent on another module to resolve first and pass the values, then it will become asynchronous modules, right? Then you need to use asynchronous configuration. Here right now I will just pass these, this will work. So every module, let's say email module, also needs to expose register async method so that I can pass these service, user and password dynamically by getting it from the config module. So I need to expose another method with the help with the register method. So I will go to my email module there and I will try to customize my implementation for dynamic consumption, because not everyone will be passing these configuration directly. So I will be having another method which is register async. So it's going to be fun, right? Register async, and it will take a email async option. I think email async options we are going to create, and that's an interface. So email async options are which we need to import and inject. So email async options, I will try to define this, and we'll also need to understand how it works. Now what we need to return? Email module, and providers. Here what we are providing is email config options. Here we need to use factory, because we are getting these options of this dynamic module dynamically. So here options which we are getting dot use factory. Okay, so for that we need to just go a little off track and need to define this. We might initially confused how to define these options. This is the dynamic module options. This is how we create. We just made this email options asynchronous. That's it, by using use factory and inject, and it is using the same module metadata which is coming from this nestjs. Okay, let's import all these things, and here now we got the email async options. This we can import, and what we need to do is, here we are writing register async method. So module and then provide email config options, use factory options dot, this is options dot use factory, and then inject, because we need to inject. What we are injecting is options dot inject. Okay, and we are passing email service, and we also need to export the email service so that everywhere I can use it at the consumer level. Okay, import module is this, and what we are importing is options.imports. These are like that default definitions we are importing from the options. And now register async is ready. Okay, so how you are going to call this now at the consumer? You are going to import this from the config module. So let's see at the consumer level and try to understand it. So here I will build this again. So under the hood, this register async is same as register method. The difference is this: use factory inject. Here we are using use factory instead of use value, because it also accepts the additional values which are being passed from the config module. So array of additional modules you can pass with this. And now we have this email module which can be invoked asynchronously. We can now use the various configurations to call this. So let's go to our app module, domain module I'm saying, and here instead of this I can call register async. Now register async is not taking, it is taking email async options, right, which is not same as the email options. So here we need to just change our implementation. It is same as this is what we are doing for root, right? Inside for root, if you remember, that was also our dynamic module we have written inside our database. I'm just showing you another reference. Here we have written this DB module, and we have provided, we just created this forRoot method to just hide the implementation of a TypeORM module, and we were also doing the same thing, passing the config service and all. Domain module here forRootAsync, I mean register async, and then we can just pass the method. Here we need to imports config module. Okay, this should be an object. Inside this we are going to do lots of things. Here let's say imports. So here we are going to pass config module, because that is the module that is going to give us the configurations. Import and inject. What we are injecting? The config service. And then use factory. What happened? Use factory, and this use factory is going to take config service instance, config service, and it is going to return me all these values. Okay, it is going to return me all these options. What I'm saying is, let's say what we need is service. So how we can get it? Using config service, this config dot get dot email dot service. So now we are doing the same thing. Is the only thing is we are getting these things dynamically from the config module. So same thing we are doing, config dot get dot email dot username password. This should be password, or it's just a pass. So the config dot get dot email dot password. So same thing we are doing, just what we are doing here is we are just using use factory because it's a dynamic initialization and we are dependent on the config module. So first we are importing config module, injecting the config module's config service. We got the config service, so we can initialize it like this. So use factory is giving us the async options. You can see it is providing us these async email options. And if you see this method register async, this email option is same as the email options, that it is just only the asynchronous version of email options, which you are going to get from the config factory provider, because factory provider is returning that. And while writing it's fun, but you will take some time to digest this logic, how it really working. But this is like the register async, another mechanism, another way of doing it. You can use register. In that way you need to pass the hard-coded values, it is same as the TypeORM module.forRoot and forRootAsync. forRootAsync, for forRootAsync, you can be dependent on a config module because that is a dynamic initialization that we are doing here in the database package. If you see my DB module, here I'm dependent on the config module, accessing the config service and getting the config module options, dynamic module options from this method. You can see what it is doing is it is returning, this is giving me the TypeORM module options. Right, similarly we are getting the config module options from this factory method. Here if you look into this factory method, what this factory method is returning, it is returning the email options, like async version of the email options. This is what it is returning, source, username, password. So this is the version 2 of our creating dynamic module and using it. So here we are not only creating that, here we created a separate monorepo workspace package, app email. Now we are consuming, this is the version 1, very simple one. Version 2, we introduce this register and register async method, and now then we are consuming it in our application using this. Okay, now let's talk about the version 3 of it, a little bit advanced of this in the next video.